everyone. Welcome to Getting Cozy with the Cozies. My name is Jackie. I'm the Asian American Pacific Islander Involvement Area Community Organizing Student Intern. And today I organized this podcast to be discussing disordered eating in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Joining me are some of my fellow executive board members from the Asian American Student Union. So if they could introduce themselves. Also, my pronouns are she, her, hers. So starting with Dahe, could you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Dahe. I'm a sophomore. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am co-VP of Community Education with Jackie.
Sagar, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sagar. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a sophomore. My position is co-social chair.
And then Patrick.
So I'm Patrick. I'm a sophomore. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the VP of Administrative Affairs.
Great. So we are talking here today about disordered eating. What I want to start off first is by distinguishing what many think disordered eating is versus eating disorders. So I think a lot of us understand what an eating disorder is. We learned about it in health class, whether it be anorexia or bulimia. We understand that it's deeply pathological eating behaviors and patterns that result in really poor health issues. However, disordered eating is a little bit different. It might not be as severe, and it's traditionally necessarily smaller thoughts or practices that concern exercise, diet, and eating habits that can be considered problematic because you're not nourishing your body as much. However, it's not considered as severe as eating disorders. And as a result, a lot more people may experience issues with disordered eating rather than eating disorders. And specifically, we're trying to bring an Asian American and Pacific Islander lens to it, examining the ways in which colonialism, white supremacy, representation influence disordered eating in our community. The first topic that we're having basically an informal discussion about these various topics that we've come up with. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about was basically how the forces of colonialism, white supremacy, Western ideals, and representation, how does that frame a fat-shaming culture and promotes disordered eating behaviors specifically in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Personally for me, I think a lot of it comes from the idea that Western media promotes only one image, and typically that image is white. And seeing that as someone who is inherently not white, I think creates a lot of problematic associations where my face, my body might not look like that.
I think that, you were talking about this, but because obviously, there's no AAPI representation really in the media, you see these, white figures and you're like, wow, I want to be like them. And typically even within, Hollywood and things like that, there's a type of even white person, or in my case a white female who is shown. So it's the thin blonde cheerleader type. And so I think there was a lot of and I had a lot of trouble, I guess, when I was younger, especially trying to figure out why I couldn't be like that character that I see on TV. Obviously that's an ideal I could never reach. Yeah, I could bleach my hair, yeah, I could lose weight, but inherently I knew I could never be that girl. And so that was something that I struggled a lot with.
Yeah, and I think that can even extend into Asian cultures. I think about when I started getting into K-pop or different representations of Japanese culture and things like that, seeing the images that they portrayed of Asian women were also so difficult to reach because they were incredibly skinny, but you would see them on variety shows eating ramen and things like that, and seeing the differences in the way in which it honestly mimics Western ideals, but in kind of a different sense, but seeing that still repeated, I think it's interesting to see.
I think sort of what Dahe was saying, we tend to model ourselves after Western cultures and Western interpretations of what beauty means and all these standards. And I think that is distinctly a colonial mentality, and that is something that is pertinent to how Asian Americans operate and how they live life. They're always haunted by this expectation that they have to live up to what the West is thinking. So it also has to do with assimilation and this idea that we are the model minority
Mhm.
And also this idea that we are the forever foreigner, that we have to take these steps in order to be
Mhm.
accepted. So I think that it inhibits who we are, but also it strengthens the activism that we take in trying to elevate certain narratives of resistance among our community.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I definitely think that this is inherently colonial, the fact that we have to follow this kind of Western framework. And a lot is like the white gays want us to look like. Because I think about, like, you know, Dahe and I, like, we've had these conversations about how, like, a few years ago, white culture deemed like East Asian culture to be so cool. And now, like, we are actually prized for like the way we look and the way our bodies look in comparison to maybe like 10 years ago when that wasn't the case. So it's all framed by like this white gaze, which inherently plays to the structures of like colonialism and white supremacy and things like that.